It was a cold evening in late autumn, and Maya pulled her coat tighter around her as she walked home. The wind howled through the nearly empty streets, making the few people outside hurry along, their heads down against the chill. Maya had just finished her shift at the small bookstore where she worked after school. She was tired, her feet ached, and she was looking forward to getting home, where her mother's warm dinner and a cozy blanket were waiting for her. As she walked past the park, something caught her eye: a woman sitting alone on a bench. The woman's clothes were thin, not nearly enough to keep her warm in this weather. Her gray hair was tangled, and her hands trembled as she held them close to her chest. A small tattered bag sat beside her, as if it carried all her belongings. Maya slowed down, glancing around. The park was almost empty, just a few people walking in the distance. Most people would keep walking, pretending not to notice. But Maya couldn't. Something about the woman's tired eyes and shivering body made her stop. She hesitated for a moment, then walked up to the bench. The woman didn't look up, as if she was used to people ignoring her. Maya cleared her throat gently. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said. The woman finally turned her head, her eyes meeting Maya's. They were tired eyes, full of stories no one had asked to hear. Maya smiled softly. "Are you okay?" she asked. It was a simple question, but the woman's eyes filled with tears, as if no one had asked her that in a long time. She gave a small nod, but her hands were still shaking from the cold. Without thinking twice, Maya reached up and unwrapped the scarf from around her neck. It wasn't just any scarf. It was her favorite one, a soft, warm piece of cloth with beautiful patterns. It had belonged to her grandmother, who had knitted it by hand. Every stitch reminded Maya of the warm hugs and bedtime stories her grandmother used to give her before she passed away. But right now, someone else needed it more. Maya gently draped the scarf around the woman's shoulders. "Here," she said, adjusting it so it covered her properly. "This will help keep you warm." The woman's hands reached up, touching the soft fabric as if she couldn't believe it. She looked at Maya with wide eyes, then whispered, "Thank you." Her voice was weak, but it carried so much emotion that Maya felt her chest tighten. "It's okay," Maya said with a reassuring smile. "Stay warm, okay?" The woman gave a small nod, still holding onto the scarf like it was the most precious thing in the world. Maya wanted to do more, but she didn't have any money on her. She wished she had packed an extra sandwich from work or had a blanket in her bag. But at least she had given her something. Something warm, something kind. Maya took one last look at the woman before stepping away. As she walked home, she couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was she? Where had she come from? Did she have a family looking for her? She sighed, shaking her head. The city was full of people with untold stories. She just hoped that, tonight, the woman would be a little warmer because someone had stopped to notice her. Maya didn't know it yet, but this small act of kindness was about to change her life in a way she never expected. The next morning, Maya woke up to the smell of pancakes and syrup. Her mother was in the kitchen, humming softly as she flipped the golden brown pancakes on the stove. The house felt warm and peaceful, just like any other morning. Maya stretched her arms and yawned before rolling out of bed. She still felt a little tired, but she had to get ready for school. As she sat at the table, pouring syrup over her pancakes, her mind drifted back to the woman in the park. Was she still there? Did she find shelter for the night? The image of the woman's trembling hands holding the scarf flashed in her mind. Maya hoped she was okay. Just as she was about to take her first bite, a loud knock at the door made her freeze. It wasn't a normal, light knock. It was firm and serious, the kind that made her mother glance up from the stove with concern. Maya's younger brother, Malik, looked up from his cereal. "Who could that be?" he asked. Her mother wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and walked toward the door. Peeking through the window, she gasped quietly before turning back to Maya. "There are police officers outside," she whispered. Maya's heart skipped a beat. The police? Why were they here? Her mother hesitated for a moment before opening the door. Two officers stood there, their uniforms crisp and official. One was a tall man with a serious expression, and the other was a woman with kind eyes. "Good morning, ma'am," the female officer said politely. "We're looking for Maya." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Her mother stepped back, concern written all over her face. "She's right here," she said, motioning toward Maya. Slowly, Maya stood up, her legs feeling slightly shaky. Had she done something wrong? Her mind raced, trying to think of any reason why the police would be at her house. The male officer pulled out his phone and showed her a picture. Maya's eyes widened. It was the woman from the park, the same woman she had given her scarf to last night. But why did the police have her picture? "Do you recognize this woman?" the officer asked. Maya swallowed and nodded. "Yes, I saw her last night in the park. She looked cold, so I gave her my scarf." The officers exchanged a glance before the woman officer spoke again. "We need you to come with us, Maya. There's something important we need to discuss." Maya's mother immediately stepped forward. "What's going on? Why do you need my daughter?" Her voice was firm, protective. The officers hesitated before the male officer finally spoke. "We can't share all the details here, but we need Maya's help. It's about the woman she met last night." Maya's heart pounded in her chest. What could this possibly be about? The woman was just a stranger in the park, wasn't she? Her mother looked at Maya, searching her face. Maya took a deep breath and nodded. "It's okay, Mom. I'll go with them." Her mother hesitated but finally sighed and grabbed her coat. "I'm coming too," she said firmly. The officers nodded, and together, they walked out of the house. As Maya stepped onto the porch, the cool morning air hit her face. The street outside looked normal. Cars passing by, neighbors walking their dogs, but nothing felt normal anymore. As she climbed into the police car, her mind spun with questions. Who was that woman? Why were the police involved? And most of all, what had Maya done to be at the center of all this? She had no idea that her simple act of kindness was about to uncover a truth no one saw coming. Maya sat quietly in the back of the police car, her hands resting on her lap. The world outside rushed past in a blur of buildings and people, but she wasn't paying attention. Her mind was spinning with questions. She glanced at her mother, who was sitting beside her, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She could tell her mother was worried, but neither of them knew what was happening. The police car pulled into the station, and one of the officers opened the door for them. "Come inside," he said, his voice calm but serious. Maya stepped out, her legs feeling unsteady. This was her first time ever being inside a police station. It wasn't like the movies. There were no loud alarms or people running around. Everything was quiet, but there was a heavy feeling in the air, like something important was about to happen. The officers led Maya and her mother to a small room with a table and a few chairs. A man in a suit was already sitting inside, waiting for them. He had a kind face but serious eyes. He nodded at Maya as she sat down. "Hello, Maya," he said. "My name is Detective Collins. I know this must be confusing for you, but we just need to ask you a few questions about last night." Maya swallowed and nodded. "Okay." Detective Collins took out his phone and placed it on the table. The screen showed a photo of the same woman Maya had met in the park. "You said you saw this woman last night, correct?" "Yes," Maya said. "She was sitting on a bench. She looked really cold, so I gave her my scarf." The detective nodded slowly. "Did she say anything to you?" Maya thought for a moment. "Not much. She just said thank you after I gave her the scarf." The detective leaned forward slightly. "Did she seem confused? Like she didn't know where she was?" Maya frowned. "I don't know. Maybe. She looked tired and sad." Detective Collins glanced at the officers before looking back at Maya. He took a deep breath. "Maya, the woman you helped last night is not just any homeless person. Her name is Margaret Langford." Maya blinked. The name didn't mean anything to her. "Who is she?" The detective folded his hands on the table. She's the mother of a very wealthy man in this city, Daniel Langford. She disappeared almost 10 years ago. Maya's mouth fell open. Disappeared. The detective nodded. She suffered from memory loss and walked away from her home one night. No one ever found her. Her family has been searching for her all these years, thinking she might be gone. Maya's heart pounded. But she's alive. Yes, the detective said. And because of you, we found her. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had only wanted to help someone stay warm, but now she had unknowingly helped reunite a family. Her mother, who had been sitting silently, finally spoke. "Where is she now?" she asked. "She's safe," the detective said. "After Maya gave her the scarf, we were able to track her down." The scarf was the key. Because of its unique pattern, it matched the description in a missing person report from years ago. When we saw the security footage from the park, we knew we had to find Maya. Maya's hands trembled slightly. She couldn't believe it. A simple act of kindness had led to something so big. "What happens now?" she asked. The detective gave a small smile. "Now we reunite her with her family, and Daniel Langford wants to meet the person who brought his mother back to him." Maya's stomach flipped. She had never expected any of this. She had only wanted to help. And now, her life was about to change forever. Maya sat in silence, trying to process everything the detective had just told her. The woman she had helped wasn't just any stranger. She was someone's missing mother. For 10 years, her family had been searching for her, never knowing where she was, or if she was even alive. And now, because of a simple scarf, she had been found. Her mother reached over and gently squeezed Maya's hand. "You did something incredible," she said softly. Maya wasn't sure what to say. She hadn't done anything special, at least, that's what she thought. All she had done was help someone who looked cold, but now her kindness had led to something much bigger than she could have imagined. Detective Collins stood up and motioned for them to follow. "Come with me," he said. "There's someone who wants to see you." Maya and her mother exchanged a glance before standing up and following the detective down a hallway. As they walked, Maya's heart pounded in her chest. Who was she about to meet? What would she say? The detective led them to a quiet room, where a tall man in a dark suit was pacing near the window. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were tired, but when he turned and saw them, something changed. His expression softened, and he quickly stepped forward. "You must be Maya," he said, his voice filled with emotion. Maya nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." The man took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I'm Daniel Langford," he said. "Margaret Langford is my mother." His voice caught slightly when he said the words. "And because of you, she's alive." Maya didn't know what to say. Daniel Langford was a name she had heard before. He was a well-known businessman in the city. People talked about him on the news, about his success, his companies, and his wealth. But right now, he wasn't just a businessman. He was a son who had finally found his mother. I didn't do much," Maya said hesitantly. "I just gave her my scarf." Daniel shook his head. "You did more than you realize," he said. "For years, my family searched for her. We put up posters, hired private investigators, did everything we could. But she was gone. We started to lose hope." He ran a hand through his hair, as if he was still trying to believe all of this was real. But then last night, someone saw a woman wearing a scarf with a very unique pattern. A pattern that matched a handmade scarf my mother used to knit. Maya's breath caught. "She made scarves like that?" Daniel nodded. "She used to love knitting. She made dozens of them, each with a special design. When we saw her wearing one in the security footage from the park, we knew we had to find out where it came from." Maya's mother put a hand on Maya's shoulder. "And that's why they came to our house," she said, finally understanding everything. Daniel took a step closer. "Maya, you gave her something no one else did. You saw her. You helped her. Because of you, She wasn't just another person people ignored. She was found. Maya felt her eyes sting. She had never thought of it that way. She had just wanted to do something kind. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I know there's nothing I can do to truly thank you for what you've done," he said, "but I want to help you, the way you helped my mother." Maya hesitated before taking the envelope. When she opened it, her eyes widened. Inside was a letter, a scholarship offer, a full scholarship for any college of her choice. Her mother gasped, "Oh my." Maya stared at the letter, unable to believe what she was seeing. I don't know what to say." Daniel smiled. "Say you'll accept it. You deserve it." Maya looked up at him, overwhelmed. Her one small act of kindness had changed someone's life. And now it was changing hers too. Maya held the scholarship letter in her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. She read the words again and again, but it still didn't feel real. A full scholarship. For any college of her choice. Her mother wiped a tear from her eye, her voice filled with emotion. "Maya, do you understand what this means? This is an opportunity of a lifetime." Maya swallowed hard and looked up at Daniel Langford. He was watching her with a kind smile, but she could see something else in his eyes. Gratitude, deep and sincere. I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel chuckled softly. "Then don't say anything right now. Just know that this is a gift from my family to you. You changed my life, and I want to help change yours." Maya looked at her mother again. They weren't rich, and college had always seemed like something difficult to afford. She had good grades and big dreams, but she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. And now, in her hands, was something that could change her future completely. But more than that, it wasn't just about the scholarship. It was about kindness, about how one small action, something as simple as giving away a scarf, could lead to something so unexpected. Detective Collins cleared his throat, breaking the moment. "Margaret Langford is still resting," he said. "But she's asking for you, Maya." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "She is." Daniel nodded. "She remembers you. She keeps asking about the kind girl who gave her the scarf." Maya took a deep breath. She wasn't sure what she would say to the woman, but she knew she had to see her. She wanted to see her. A few minutes later, they arrived at a private hospital. Maya followed Daniel and the officers inside, her mother walking beside her. The hospital smelled clean, and everything was quiet except for the occasional sound of footsteps and soft voices. They walked down a long hallway until they reached a small room. Inside, lying on a hospital bed, was the woman Maya had met in the park. But now she looked different. She was clean, wearing a warm sweater, and her gray hair was neatly brushed. There was color in her face now, and her eyes. Those tired, lost eyes Maya had seen the night before were filled with life. When Margaret Langford saw Maya, she smiled. "There she is," she whispered. Maya hesitated before stepping closer. "Hi," she said softly. Margaret reached out a wrinkled hand, and Maya gently took it. Her grip was warm, steady. "You saved me," Margaret said, her voice filled with emotion. "When no one else saw me, you did." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes. "I just wanted to help." Margaret nodded. "And you did. More than you know." She reached for the scarf draped over her lap. The same scarf Maya had given her. This scarf, it reminded me of home, of the son I had forgotten. And because of you, I found my way back. Daniel stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on his mother's shoulder. "She's back, thanks to you," he said, "and I'll never forget that." Maya felt something deep inside her, warmth, joy, something she couldn't quite describe. She had always believed in kindness, but now she understood just how powerful it could be. Margaret squeezed Maya's hand one last time. "Thank you, my dear," she whispered. Maya smiled, her heart full. "You're welcome." She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. This moment, this act of kindness, had changed all of their lives forever. Maya left the hospital that evening with her mother, her mind still processing everything that had happened. The weight of the day sat heavy on her shoulders, but it wasn't a bad feeling. It was something else, something deep, something she couldn't quite describe. She had only wanted to help, a small act of kindness. But that one moment had changed so much. It had reunited a mother with her son, given hope to a family that had almost lost it, and even opened doors for Maya herself. As they got into the car, her mother looked over at her. "I'm so proud of you," she said softly. Maya smiled but didn't say anything. She wasn't used to being in the center of attention like this. By the time they got home, it was already dark. Maya was exhausted, but she couldn't sleep. Her phone had been buzzing all day. Messages from friends, people from school, and even strangers. News about what had happened had spread quickly. Someone had even taken a picture of her outside the police station, and now people were talking about how a high school girl had helped solve a 10-year-old mystery. She didn't know how to feel about that. She hadn't done this for attention. She had just followed her heart. Maya's little brother, Malik, peeked into her room. "Maya." She sat up. "Yeah." He walked in, holding his blanket. "Is that lady okay now? The one you helped?" Maya smiled. "Yeah, she's okay now." Malik nodded, satisfied with the answer. "You're like a superhero," he said before running back to his room. Maya chuckled softly, shaking her head. A superhero. She didn't feel like one. She was just Maya. The next day at school, everything felt different. People were whispering about her in the hallways, and a few students even came up to her, telling her how amazing it was that she had helped find Margaret Langford. She tried to brush it off, but deep down, it felt nice to know that people saw kindness as something important. At lunchtime, she was sitting with her best friend, Aisha, when she got a call from an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello. Maya. It's Daniel Langford." Maya sat up straight. "Oh, hi, Mr. Langford." He chuckled. "Please, call me Daniel. I just wanted to tell you that my mother is doing better today. She keeps talking about you. I think she sees you as part of the family now." Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. "I'm really happy she's okay." "She's more than okay," Daniel said. "And I wanted to tell you something else. We're holding a small event this weekend, a celebration for my mother's return. My family would love for you and your family to come." Maya's eyes widened. "A celebration?" "Yes," he said. "And the mayor will be there." Maya nearly dropped her phone. "The mayor?" Daniel laughed. "Yes, he heard about what happened, and he wants to meet you. He wants to recognize you for what you did." Maya couldn't believe it. First, the scholarship. Now this. It all felt too big, too unreal. I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Just say you'll come," Daniel said kindly, "because you deserve it." Maya hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Okay, I'll be there." As she hung up the phone, Aisha stared at her. What was that about? Maya exhaled, still overwhelmed. I think I'm going to meet the mayor." Aisha's mouth fell open. "What?" Maya couldn't help but laugh. Life had suddenly become an adventure she never saw coming. The next few days passed in a blur. Everywhere Maya went, people wanted to talk to her about what had happened. Her teachers, classmates, and even strangers in the neighborhood stopped her to say how proud they were of her. It was overwhelming, but Maya was grateful. Her mother helped her pick out a nice dress for the event. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple blue dress that made her feel comfortable. "You don't need anything flashy," her mother said. "Just be yourself. That's why people admire you." The night of the celebration arrived. The event was being held at a grand hotel downtown. Maya had never been inside a place like this before. The large chandeliers sparkled, and the entire hall was decorated with beautiful flowers and golden lights. There were important-looking people everywhere, businessmen, reporters, and even a few celebrities. Maya held her mother's hand tightly as they walked inside. "This is too much," she whispered. Her mother squeezed her hand. "Just take a deep breath. You belong here." As they entered the hall, Daniel Langford spotted them and walked over with a big smile. He was wearing a sharp suit, but his warm expression made Maya feel more at ease. "You made it," he said. "Come on, there's someone who really wants to see you." He led them through the crowd, past tables filled with delicious food and elegantly dressed guests. Then Maya saw her, Margaret Langford. She was sitting in a comfortable chair, wearing a lovely light-colored dress. Her hair was neatly styled, and there was a peaceful glow on her face. The moment she saw Maya, her eyes lit up with joy. "There she is," Margaret said with a smile. "My angel." Maya felt her heart swell. She walked over and took Margaret's hands. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly. Margaret squeezed her hands gently. "Better than I have in years," she said. "And it's all because of you." Maya felt a lump in her throat. She didn't know what to say. Just then, a voice came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" Maya turned to see a man in a dark suit standing on the stage. She recognized him immediately. The mayor. "We are gathered here tonight to celebrate a beautiful reunion," the mayor said. "A mother and son brought back together after 10 long years. And this incredible moment happened because of one simple act of kindness." The crowd clapped, and Maya felt her cheeks heat up. She had a feeling she knew where this was going. The mayor smiled. "Maya, could you please come up to the stage?" Maya's breath caught in her throat. She turned to Daniel, who nodded encouragingly. Her mother gave her a reassuring look. Taking a deep breath, Maya stepped forward and walked up to the stage. As she faced the crowd, her hands trembled slightly, but she stood tall. The mayor smiled at her. "Maya, your kindness has reminded us all of something important, that small actions can change lives. You didn't hesitate to help a stranger, and because of that, a lost mother found her way home." The crowd clapped again, and Maya felt tears well up in her eyes. The mayor continued, "On behalf of this city, I am honored to present you with this award for outstanding kindness and community spirit." A woman stepped forward and handed Maya a golden plaque. As she held it, a wave of emotion rushed through her. Maya looked out into the crowd and saw Margaret smiling warmly. Daniel nodded at her with gratitude. Her mother wiped away a tear. At that moment, Maya realized something important. It wasn't about awards or recognition. It was about kindness, and kindness had the power to change the world. Maya stood on the stage, holding the golden plaque in her hands. The applause filled the large hall, but she could barely hear it. Her heart was racing, her hands trembling slightly. She had never imagined that a simple act of kindness, giving away her scarf, would lead to this moment. As the clapping died down, the mayor leaned toward her with a smile. "Would you like to say a few words, Maya?" Maya's eyes widened. She hadn't prepared anything. Speaking in front of so many people made her nervous. But then she looked at Margaret Langford, sitting with her son, smiling with pure happiness. She saw her mother, standing proudly, and Malik, her little brother, waving excitedly from the audience. Taking a deep breath, Maya stepped closer to the microphone. I don't really know what to say," she started, her voice shaky. "I didn't do anything special. I saw someone who needed help, and I wanted to help." The room was silent, everyone listening to her words. "My mom always tells me that kindness doesn't cost anything," she continued. "And I believe that. Sometimes small things, like sharing a meal, a smile, or even a scarf, can make a big difference." She looked at Margaret. "That night, when I gave my scarf away, I had no idea that it would bring a family back together. But it did. And that's when I realized something. Kindness isn't just about helping someone for one moment. It's about creating something bigger, something that lasts." Maya paused for a second, then smiled. So, if I have one thing to say tonight, it's this. If you see someone who needs help, don't hesitate. Even if it seems small, do something. Because you never know how much it might mean to them. The crowd erupted into applause. Some people stood up, clapping even louder. Maya felt a mix of emotions, happiness, gratitude, and a little bit of disbelief. As she stepped down from the stage, Daniel Langford was the first to greet her. "That was beautiful," he said. "Thank you, Maya." Margaret took Maya's hands in hers. "You are an angel, my dear. Never forget that." Maya's mother pulled her into a hug. "I couldn't be prouder," she whispered. The rest of the night felt like a dream. People came up to her, shaking her hand, telling her how much her story had inspired them. Some even shared their own stories of kindness, moments when a stranger had helped them, or when they had helped someone else. By the time they left the event, Maya felt lighter, as if something deep inside her had changed. As they drove home, Malik yawned in the backseat. "Maya," he mumbled sleepily. "Yeah?" she asked. "You were right. Kindness is cool." Maya chuckled and reached back to ruffle his hair. "Yeah, it is." The next morning, she woke up to find her story all over the internet. News websites, social media, and even local TV stations were talking about the girl who changed a life with kindness. But Maya didn't care about the fame. She just hoped that her story would inspire others to be kind too. A week later, she received a letter. It was from a woman she had never met. "Dear Maya, I heard your story, and it reminded me of something important, that there are still good people in the world. I was feeling lost, but you gave me hope again. Thank you for being who you are." Maya smiled as she finished reading. She had always believed in kindness, but now she truly understood its power. It didn't just change one life. It could spread, touching many more. And she promised herself, no matter what happened in the future, she would always choose kindness. Because kindness, she realized, was the one thing that could truly change the world.